as you mentioned, the artists out there, the talent is ridiculous. There's so many ridiculously talented artists, and writing is harder to prove your ability, I would say. And often the artist is just doing their job in one sense. But if you as a writer go, okay, I know I've got this project, I know that I've proven myself, or even if you haven't, it could be your first idea. There's nothing wrong to say an artist can give you that feedback as well. Go, no, hey, it's great. Let's get into it. Or they go, oh, what about this? All creative beings at the end of the day.
Yeah, and there's something to. So I'm the writer here. Roberto's the artist. I fully agree. You got to pay your artists and that. And like you said, you can't really prove yourself as a writer. And even if you could, even if you're like, here's all my work, nobody's gonna read it, right? Unless they're already a fan of you, they're not gonna go out of their way to read everything that's ever sent to them just because of the constraints of that. But the other side of it is for me to write a 24-page script, Roberto's probably going to get 2 pages done in that same amount of time. So I can live with not getting paid for my writing because the amount of, again, I'm putting a lot of work into it. Let's not say I'm not doing anything. I like just from idea to outlining to everything, like it's work. Don't get me wrong, but right, I'm happy to take on the sales end of it and the ownership of it and say, oh, for the artist, it's your job is to tell the story. This is the story I'm giving you. You tell the story. I'll figure out the rest. That's on me, and I'm happy to do that. That's a trade-off, I think, with indie comics that maybe you probably don't even get with a properly published one. You're the writer, you're also the salesman and the producer, and right, like you're doing end-to-end at that point. The artist's job is to create art, and that's fine, and that's the agreement. And I think both sides understand that, unless you're an all-in-one kind of person. But generally speaking, if you want to write comics, you also better be ready to sell comics and put comics, probably even crowdfund them yourself. Yeah. And most importantly, producing, you got to pay for them. Yeah. No artist should work for free unless they're a good friend of yours or something like that. But even then,
it's about the end game, like what the split is. And I know people who work on splits and things like that. For me, I just like to make sure everyone's paid, everyone's looked after first, and then, like you said, and it's funny that we don't talk about this often enough, but comic book writers, we're producers, we're marketers.
Yeah.
We do all of that sort of work. It's not just writing, which dream be just writing and then other people do all that work. But that's a really good point. We have to do that as part of it. And artists it allows them just to be able to do their thing and bring that magic to the page. But I'm sure artists are out there promoting their own work as well, but getting those jobs, it does come down to the writer to be the producer, which, it's a great point.
Yeah. And again, that's where I was getting at with the time end of things, right? Like I can get a script together relatively quickly to how long it will take to then draw it, right? So artists' hands are tied. Because if I say, hey, Roberto, draw me 24 pages of this comic, I'm done. Like my parts, I wiped my hands of the project until he's sending back layouts or anything like that. So what do I do in that time? That's my time to sell and to do whatever else needs to be done. And if you're talking crowdfunding, with a whole world of things that have to be done, right? So, and that's kind of trade-off. Like the vision of the writer sitting on a dock somewhere with their laptop, just dreaming things up, and then they close it and they smoke a cigarette and job well done. I worked for 3 hours today. That doesn't exist.
Well, in the screenwriting world, sometimes it's okay. You just got to knuckle down, do your thing, deliver it to the producer. And there's something magical about that, being able just to write. So I'm very grateful for that. But it is interesting when you want to get your own work out there, and the comic books, that's the beauty of it. And it's a double-edged sword in many ways, because you have to do it yourself. When no one else is going to do it for you, you got to get out there. And until you've proven your name, or you've somehow got an image title or something like that. But I think that's exciting, right? I think we should want to, I've got this quote in a script that I wrote, which says something like, if I remember it correctly, everyone wants the summit, but we got to learn to love the mountain. So it's not about the success. It's not about the end game, or you have to actually learn to love the climb during the hard work, during the coming up with the creative ideas, putting the effort in is the reward. And if you make it to the summit, that's just like bonus in my mind. And whatever that summit may be, it's different for different people. But I actually am one of those weirdo writers who love the blank page. I love just sitting and writing. And I know there's this romantic notion of writers. It's really hard and we need to fight this thing to get any words done and we're pouring ourselves onto a page. But I don't know. I'm not that kind of writer. I actually love that I can just sit and come up with, I was going to swear, but I won't swear. But come up with, wait, swear, just come up with stuff and lies and stories and surprise myself while I'm writing like this. There's a joy in that I don't necessarily get from other types of works. Yeah, writing itself, the struggle is the fun part.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's people who love writing and then there's people who love having written, right? And yeah, if you're in the latter camp, everything's going to be an uphill battle for you, right? But yeah, like you have to almost be willing to write for nobody for a long time.
Yeah.
That's just the
For
reality.
yourself.
Yeah, you write for yourself and with no expectation of anyone ever reading it. If you're a writer and you don't even have a journal, like that's step one, right? Write to yourself at that
Yeah.
point. Just if you need to get words on the page, that's a good way to do it. Just get words on the page regularly. And you'll find that like any muscle, like the more you work it out, the easier it becomes to do the rest. And then to your point, like when it's time to, okay, now I have my story and I have to think this out and really plan and build the meat of it. That muscle's well worked. Like it's warmed up. It's good. You just start writing and it should be easy. Like it shouldn't be, maybe cracking a story is hard. Maybe it's not working the way you thought, but sitting down and writing, like that should, if you want to be a writer, that should be the good part.
And even if it's not easy, that's the work. It's the craft. And we always talk about rewriting and that sort of stuff. That writing is rewriting. And it is, but you can't rewrite unless you've got something out. So you're spot on. We just need to get it out, put it on the page. And just as we're watching now with Roberto, like sketches it out, refines it, changes things. This is the thing. I'm not really a digital, I do a bit of art, but I'm trying to learn. I've got an iPad Pro that I'm trying to do. And I'm assuming you're working on a Wacom or one of those iPad Pros?
Yeah, it's a Wacom. It's a Cintiq. So I'm drawing it on the screen.
Yeah, there's something just about the versatility that gives you that you can move things. Like I'm pencil and paper kind of guy, and I'm trying to learn the digital. There's so much, it's a bit of an uphill battle, but I do love the concept that, yeah, you can just be trying things. It's like in writing where we put something down and we refine it, we rewrite it, we come back to it, we get rid of it, we start again for that scene or whatever it happens to be. This to me is like the visualization of that process, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it's great. You get all of it in one, right? Like and it lets you refine and all that as you go, where pencil and paper, it's like you might have to, if you're working on you're working on an iPad, there's a tool called, there's not a tool, it's like a film you put on your iPad. It's called like Paperlike. And it drags your pen a little better, like a little closer to what paper might feel like. So that might be a way to bridge that. But there's still that gap between your pencil and the art, but
Yeah.
a little better than gliding across glass.
I had a smaller, I got that Paperlike, but it's, you know what? It's not actually the drawing. What it is to me is the concept of layers and things like that. So I would just draw on one layer and I'll go, oh, I want to move that leg or whatever. And I'll go, oh crap, I didn't create a new layer. It's also what all the different buttons use, whether I'm on Procreate or Photoshop or whatever. I'm like, what does that do again? And so I use like the things that I know, and I've been working on it. I'm going to just be honest. I've gone back to pen and paper and then taking photos of it and then do the inking on I don't know why. It's just, for me, that's working for me until I learn that process. And you know what? I'm nowhere near as much the talent we're seeing in front of us right now, but it's good to see how people do it. And I do watch YouTubes and things that they're doing very similar things, but seeing the art come to life in real time, it really helps artists, I think, to see how it's done and to learn and to be like, hey, you know what? It's okay. Make mistakes, start again, try this, try that. It's such a great concept.
Yeah. And it's the wonder of the internet, right? Because before you'd have to creep a an artist at a convention and hover over them as they're drawing to awareness. You go, now you can actually just watch. I know Roberto does those live streams on Saturdays, and you can watch them every week if you want. But yeah, there's all kinds of stuff out there to see how everyone's doing it. But to your point, like about you do your pencils on pen and paper, and then you ink it digitally. That's not an uncommon process. So it's not as though you're missing out so much. We've had someone on that goes as far as they refuse to even ink digitally. Like they ink in their sketchbook and then color digitally. Right. So it's really, there's no rules to it, right? It's what's going to get you the result you want. And if it's doing it in that way, doing it half, it's whatever works, right? There isn't a right or wrong way to get to the result, at least, right? There's a right or wrong way perspective and all that business. There isn't in terms of having a completed piece of art. However you get there, that's you, man. And that's what makes you unique, right? It's always gonna have a different style, a different look if you have a different approach to it, right? If you're trying to force it one way or the other, you might lose something. Yeah, don't beat yourself up for doing it that way. That's a completely valid and popular way of doing it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and you know what? Like you said, we all have different processes and getting there. It's just funny because that's one reason why I love the idea of working with artists on Future Tales, was because to me it takes so long to do that, and I love coming up with this is what that panel should look like, and this is my thumbnail version of it. But find like colors, I'm not a colorist. I'm not even really an eco, so it's like finding people to do all that. It's sometimes there's obviously a part of us, and some writers might feel this part of us wants to create and draw our own art. I think that's great. That's the dream. Yeah, but there's also a level of like skill and quality that you're like, okay, if I give this to an artist, I know I'm getting that straight away. And it is filled almost like in a really bad sense, almost, there's a bit of a cheat because I'm using someone, but it's not, because it creates that collaboration. You come up with something new. But and then I really also respect the people who just want to do their own thing, make their own art, and it might take them way longer, and it may not be at that same quality, but you're actually bringing your own touch and your own line work and mark to the world. So yeah, I think I like both. That's the strange thing.
Yeah, no, and there's no wrong way, right? I think it's all about, and we've talked about it in the past too. It's all about what you want to put your time into, right? So if you're putting equal time into writing and art, and you're really like, what you're honing is your ability to like make a completed comic, then that's you, right? That's as long as you're putting in that time to do it the right way. If you're like, you know what, stories are stupid, I just want to draw art, that might not get you where you want to go. And same in the other end, where I'm just going to do stick figures. Although there's nothing wrong with stick figures, but if that's going to lead to a different kind of book than maybe you envisioned in your head. Yeah, it's all about just where are you putting your energy and your effort. And sometimes it's pays to just say, you know what, I'm not a colorist. I know people that do this regularly, and it's almost like a cheat code. It's going to get me to the level, and I don't have to have all that time and experience and effort to get to their level. I just bring them on board, right? And I get to use their skill and their ability to tell our story. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But again, it's all, there's no rules here, right? Whatever is going to get you what you want in the end is how you should approach it. I say there's no rules. There's rules. There's not rules. Put it together.
Yeah, when I used to, if I was running a workshop on screenwriting or whatever, my whole thing is about, learn the rules so you can break them more creatively. Because that's what art is. And there is, especially in screenwriting and the film industry, there is this balance between you have to know what you're doing, but then you can also, if you know what you're doing, then you can break them more creatively. Whereas some new writers, they want to try something new, and they should. And I think that's great. But they might not even get a look in because they're using the wrong font, or there's all these weird rules in screenwriting, like certain margins and all that sort of stuff. And if you don't get those right, you can actually break them. I've seen the scripts; they do really interesting things. And I believe
every Tarantino script.
I read a Coen Brothers script years ago, and it's written almost in prose, and it's like they're the Coen Brothers, but did they get because they'd proven themselves and then they could do it? Or was that how they've always operated? Like it's this weird barrier of entry, but it also allows you to be more creative. You need to know those rules. And I think comics is similar. Like, you got to know how panel work and how the reader, the eye goes along the page. Then you can do some really trippy stuff and really interesting stuff. Like, I'm trying to think of, what's his name? Dave Sandman artist. You know what I mean, Dave?
Yeah.
And do some really interesting stuff where you blend the panels, or there is no panels on a page, but you're doing that for a creative choice.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder, Roberto, are you looking for your mute button?
I literally, sorry, read about a bunch of the graphic novels from the bookcase, and yeah, but that's the thing that I really like, is that it's not, comics and graphic novels are not one thing. Everyone is different, and sometimes you want just the safe, everything is how you expect it. Sometimes you just want the artwork where there's no panels. It's getting creative with the writing even. And that's what I love about art as well. It's such a spectrum. You can go from really simple and Disney animated film to something. I just saw a film recently called Flow, which is an animated, completely no dialogue feature film. And it's just about a cat, really. But the artwork is amazing. Yeah. Cool. Animation.
Yeah. The world of animation is incredible. That one is seeming more and more complicated to get into nowadays, but yeah, but I think it's just cost prohibitive and all that business. And they're always looking for ways to do it cheaper and cheaper, with AI looming and all that business. Although,
that's a whole
yeah, we don't have enough time to get into that. But yeah, it's amazing how even the smallest tweaks can take things in a totally different direction. But like you said, there are rules, and you never want to give people an easy out, especially if you're establishing yourself. Like, you don't want to give folks a reason to say no before they've even delved into it. So if you have something really off the wall and different and crazy, like it still has to follow some basic tenets that people will, at least you can bring them on board and then take them on this wild ride. But if you're starting right there and people don't have any kind of way in, you've given them a reason not to bother.
I think,
and that goes even with your mentioning, like, formatting screenplays and things. Like, you can go crazy with your format if you want, but if they don't know who you are and they need a reason to drop your script, you've given them one.
That's a good point. And thinking about your audience, not just the end game audience, but who you're on. And we mentioned it earlier. When I'm running a script, it's either I'm hired by a director and it's all about, okay, I need to give that director's vision into this script. But if it's running my own, it's for where's the market, what producers, what development executives will see this and think they can make money from it. But with comic book scripts, for me, the script is all about the artist, because no one's going to see that script apart from me and the artist. So it's about, how do I convey my ideas to them whilst giving them enough room to come up with their magic. So knowing your audience actually also gives you a bit of freedom. If you say, like you mentioned, you have a wacky idea, and there's an audience for that wacky idea. It might be niche, and you just have to scale your project to fit that. Then you know you've got an audience. So whoever you have to convince to come on board, it makes it a little bit easier. And I think always tracking ourselves, because we're audiences first and foremost for our own writing or art. So tracking ourselves. And I will say this one thing as a bit of a tip from my younger self, but for any other kind of writers out there, ideas come all the time. I don't know about you, but sometimes we're fighting off. We've got too many ideas, and it's about picking the right ones. And we might develop and we get really excited about one and put a lot of time in there, there's nothing wrong with that. And if that's your hobby, that's the dream again, just coming up with your own ideas. But if it's about trying to get it to the world or making money or whatever it happens to be, I would say out of it, 10 concepts that you have developed, and let's say you have 20 ideas, which are just pie in the sky little ideas. What if, like, a modern day version of a Cupid? Oh, cool. That's an idea. But then for it to become a premise, it would be, what if the modern day version of Cupid, instead of using the bow and arrow, they use like a sniper rifle for their love darts or whatever. So that they're almost like an assassin. What if they, and getting a little inspiration from this comment, what if they tripped over and shot themselves in the foot So a human falls in love with them. Oh, now I've got a concept. Okay, cool. There's a concept there. Can I do, oh, what is it? Is it a wrong poem? Is it a whatever? And then I'm develop that further up and go, you know what? It's not the right time. I can't waste too much time on that. I need to work on my contained horror because I know that's selling right now. And also, this is a really cool concept that's very about the housing crisis or something. I'm just talking out my ass at the moment, but
Yeah. Here's giving ideas away for free, man.
but that's how I think we should all be. Like, yeah, we come up with our ideas. Is that something? Let's explore it a little bit until you get like a concept, you've got a premise, and you go, well, okay, and maybe that's the one, and you jump for it. And sometimes like there was this new concept that I just pitched recently, and I won't go into it now, but it came clean to me. I pitched it. It's in the zeitgeist, and it's okay, that's my next spec script when I have time, which is almost never. That's the one I should work on because I can see an avenue to my audience or to market. So out of the 20 we come up with, 10 might become premises that are viable. 5 might become ones that other people will be able to, either we can see that there's an audience there, and not just a niche audience, but something that can push it. And then there's only 1 or 2, which is the one that we're going to choose to work on. So we're idea machines. As writers, as artists, it's about ideation, but then the skill to learn is picking which one you're going to put your effort and time in, and allowing some to sit on the back burner for months, years, who knows how long.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can't be precious with your ideas, right? Like you always hear about the folks that have that one idea that they've been working on for 10 years. Yeah. And if somebody would just talk to them, they would definitely sell them on it. And it's ideas are a dime a dozen. Like you can't.
Sorry, just like you're saying about art, like people have different ways. That could be their one thing. And you know what? If it sells, amazing. Or if they print it or publish it, amazing. That's great. That's their one idea and that's what they've got. And
Sure.
There's nothing wrong with that. So that's one way of doing it. And I guess the other idea is what we'll talk about, coming up with lots of different ones and finding the right ones, working on it and putting the heart effort into it. Regardless of which avenue you choose, it's going to be hard work, but it's worth it in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. And I think you mentioned it much earlier was finishing things. Like if you have an idea, it doesn't mean you have to finish every idea you get. Like you said, you put some on the back burner, maybe some never, like it was a good idea, but it's not a complete idea. It's not a whole idea. And that's okay. That's why you have more ideas, right?
And you dozens of those. I've got documented too of these half-baked ideas, which we might really love. And maybe one day it'll come back around.
Yeah.
And we're not working on it. And that's fine. See, even this, I'm glad we landed on something like this, but if I was thinking about this more deeply, I would probably go more sci-fi because that's just my jam. That's what I love. I have actually a background in science as well. That's what I studied at uni, and I love my quantum mechanics, and I often bring that into my work. But it's funny that the fact that the whole premise of this show, where you're like, we're thrown in the deep end and now we're just scrambling for an idea, it actually can come up with something that you would not have thought about, which I think there's some sort of magic in that as well, right? Would we have thought of this if we sat down and said, let's come up with a cool comic page? Maybe not. Because my brain would have went a bit more fiction, sci-fi or speculative. But hey, we landed on something fun.
Yeah, for sure. And the room to experiment is important too, right? Because you also have your tendencies in that. And then if we're going to use the muscle analogy again, you can't do the same thing over and over. You got to stretch it in different ways. And so for this experiment, it's always good because we're put up against the wall with our time, with how much time we got and how much space we got. So you're forced to come up with something that maybe you wouldn't have, but there's always a little bit of you in there, right? We noticed that because every story's been pretty different, but somehow we seem to follow these themes. It's been interesting how Roberto and I are the constant. And although Roberto's definitely deep into it, doing all the art. I'm less into it. I throw an idea in here or there, but there's been a lot of themes that we carry through everything. So it's been interesting.
But this theme seems a little bit, it's also sometimes structure because I like twists. I like reveals. I like wordplay when something's a bit more surprising, or you go, I get it. That sort of vibe, whether it's film, TV, comics. I like being in a story world and just exploring that world as well. But I really love I guess it's the joke structure, something something where you're expecting one thing and then it's else. And I guess that's thematic in this, that we're setting up one thing and then there's a twist, which in this case is a little bit darker, a little bit I think it's comedy still, right? Do you see this as comedy?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's dark, but it's, yeah. And it's the surrealism of it. It helps, right? Like it's not, and had we gone extra gory, maybe we lose that.
Yeah.
But goofy with the tattoo and all that, I think that really helps make it a little less dark, a little more silly, but still very dark.
It was looking amazing, Roberto. And this has got some, you're obviously really good at what you do. And I'm going to start following your live page. But yeah, I'll send you.
Yeah. And so speaking to people who, you know, chose a path, followed it. Roberto's the good example of that, right? Like he's an artist by trade. So me trying to whip something like this together with my dozens of hours of artistic experience doesn't come anywhere close to this. But that's because the path he's gone down, right? So for me to say, I want this result, but I don't want to put in the time, that's not really not going to happen. And that could go with any avenue, right? Whether it's writing or coloring or whatever aspect of that. Like it's what are you putting your time into, and that's what the thing you're going to get the results in.
There's that 10,000 hour rule.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think we all have our own innate skills that we may not know about, whether that's athletic or technical or creative. But you're 100% right. I think the more you do, you choose a path, the more you do that, the more time we put into it, that's when you start to hone it. But I feel like we're pushed towards certain paths because of some innate drive, which is funny because I would say no one's born with the skill to draw. So there's something else. There's a process in between those two things before you choose to follow that path and before you've learned that skill. So yeah, I don't know. There's something outside of this where we can get really philosophical here, but maybe we should.
I'm into it. No, although we do have a time limit, but yeah, so the thing we always bring up is it's a willingness to fail, right?
Yeah.
So my frustration with art has always been like, I hate that I'm bad at it, right? Like I do it and it's not what I saw in my head and I get frustrated and I stop, right? Where if I'm writing, I'm willing to fail. I'm willing to go to an editor and have them tell me that everything I've done is incorrect, that there are no stakes. I just had a conversation with my editor. I was told that there are no stakes in my story. And I said, what do you mean? And as she questioned me, I quickly learned that there are indeed no stakes in my story. But it's the willingness to take that and be like, yeah, okay, I understand and I'm going to improve. Right. So even that 10,000 hour rule, right? It's not about 10,000 hours of the same thing, right? Like you can't just draw for 10,000 hours and never show anybody. That's not going to get you anywhere. 10,000 hours of deliberate practice and having people correct you and give you tips and lead you down the right path so that you end up where you're at, like taking classes and working with your peers and all that business. Like that's all part of it. That's your 10,000 hours, not just reps, but reps are very important.
I 100% agree with that. And even the idea that that could also doesn't necessarily mean it has to financial success. It could just be something that we love to do, right?
Absolutely. And I think again, yeah, if you want to just like splatter paint somewhere and that makes you feel good, then hey, that's cool. But I find generally people they have a goal. They want to get to a certain level where they like their art. And to do that, yeah, you have to challenge yourself, right? You have to put yourself out there and let yourself get trashed a bit, right? And again, hopefully constructive. Like you want constructive criticism, just people to tell you're bad. That doesn't help. But you want them to tell you you should work on perspective. You should work on whatever, right? And that's how you improve. But if you're not willing to do that, then you're the artist that I am, where I do doodles because I find them goofy and that's it. But that's all I'm willing to put into it. Where my writing, that's the thing I'm willing to suffer for a bit. And get beaten up for it.
I'm possibly this, and maybe we should talk about how we take notes as well, because I think we're making mistakes and learning from it, even our own writing. So before you even send your work to your editor, you've done that multiple times.
Absolutely.
Which is such a good point. Like it's failure. Failure is literally what leads us to success and learning and discovery. So that's a really good point. But then also when you're getting an external note, it's actually also about thinking about that contextually and the note behind the note. Because someone might say, "Oh, you've got no stakes," and you automatically, of course I've got stakes. But how I work anyway is when I get a note like that, I go, okay, it's not on the page. Either I can see it and for what it is and be like, oh, actually she's right. There's no stakes. It's just following a person around. Or I go, hold on, I see that there are stakes. It's his life. It's there's something else at stake here but then it's not on the page. Because then that's the difference, is the gap between us and the other people is what's on the page. So then you go back and go, okay, actually that's maybe rethink and I'm going to completely, or it makes me realize I just haven't thought deep enough. So I'm not going to change it completely, but I'm going to go and prove it now. And I think there's a balance there where you need to sometimes back yourself, but prove it on the page. And then other times we need to go back and start again, which knowing those differences is the tricky part. But it's basically through experience.
Absolutely. And yeah, and speaking to the editor, right? You should always be willing to stand up for your work. But if you have so there's a difference between a good editor and a bad one is the bad editor will tell you this is wrong, right? This is wrong. You're not doing this right. The good editor will walk you to that answer, right? We'll say, what are the stakes here? What do you mean by this? Is this what you meant to say? And then slowly you start to realize, oh, yeah, I see where I've gone astray, right? Where, yeah, because they both might be right, but it doesn't help you to just know that you failed. You need to know how you failed and why. And sometimes the walk through the woods is how you get there.
Yeah, it's absolutely. The walk through the
Editing reward for weight and gold, you know?
Right. Oh, wow. This has really come together in a way that I was not expecting. The level, like in an hour's time, just being able to, this is almost a complete, like you can print this. Well done.
Yeah. It's, Roberto's got a touch to it.
The other one up page somewhere that we can check out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's instantinkpodcast.xyz. We went with the weird the domain, but XYZ is the instantinkpodcast.xyz.
Yeah, great.
So I know we got a hard stop and we have very little time left. So as far as dialogue goes, we can always pump that in. If you have to drop off, that's okay. But I think we were just looking for what? It's going to be a quick, like, that first panel is them walking through the woods. Mm-hmm. Are they saying anything to one another there? Or is that his... maybe this...
I would say on that second panel is the line, remember, we eat what we killed. That's sort of the thing that we can build. That's our fulcrum for this project. But I would say there's nothing wrong with having some dialogue in that opening panel. However, I don't know about you, but I'm generally less is more when it comes to dialogue. There's something nice about just showing this father son and letting the image do the heavy. The next page is what sets up everything, our joke and our gag at the end. The accident, we've already got the sound effects. Yeah, I always feel like that's all we need for dialogue.
Funny. All right, so remember, we eat what we kill. That's it. Okay, I'm gonna throw stuff in for Roberto so that we can do that. We eat what we kill.
But hey, if you come up with something for that opening panel, amazing.
No, less is more. I'm with you. I just like to leave it open because I know some folks like to add some backstory, and I think this is plenty. Like they're father and son, or just whatever, two people.
Yeah, visual storytelling. You can see it pretty early, even with the perspective that Roberto brought in. That this is what I said, the magic of an artist. So that opening, we can see two different size ball. It's very easy to make the jump to father and son. And to me, visual storytelling is what I want the most when I'm an audience. I don't want to be told the story. I want to experience the story. And we're doing that with this opening panel. We can infer certain things. And then the fact that this perspective is from a heightened perspective, from the father in the foreground to the son lower down, that totally gives us a status thing in that second panel, which we didn't put that in. That was 100% a Roberto artist thing, just knowing the concept and going with the guts. That could have been framed any different way, but it's so important because it proves the father-son teaching moment. That's, to me, great visual storytelling. And then bang, right straight into the inciting incident. There's a trip. The gun goes off, and we're off and running. So I feel like these first two panels do so much for us. It sets up the next four.
Yeah, no, I like it. I'm impressed with how Full Classy came up with this. I think I may have contributed absolutely nothing to this one.
We also did. Let's be, it's mainly the artist. But
yeah. Roberto always does the heavy lifting, right?
The concept is key. The structure, how you structure it, like we've just done then, sometimes can be found through collaboration and through the end. But you need to know, and this is a great example of that. You need to know where you're starting and where you're ending, I think, in writing. I know prose writers or pants seat writers. Yeah. That works. I think that works when you're just writing prose, when you're a novelist, and that can be, you find your way because it's about the writing itself. But if you're collaborating, if you're working with someone, or if you're doing a visual medium, and especially if there's a certain time constraint or space constraint, I think you need, for me at least, knowing where I'm going allows me to connect the dots in the most efficient way possible without wasting words or space or panels. There is not one panel wasted in this one. Each one is the next step in the story. I don't think you could combine any of these and get the same outcome.
Agreed. Yeah, no, this is very efficient storytelling, and I like it. And again, we didn't even need the dialogue very much. Just that one establishing thing, because if we had more space, we could probably even get away with that dialogue. But
yeah. Well, that's a good one. But I love that it's establishing shot. It establishes their honor. If you didn't have that opening panel, or if you move that dialogue to the opening panel, great. It can still work. And then it's only a 5-panel page. However, like we said, perspective coming down is what I call a prover. I use this in my screenwriting. Sometimes you just need to make sure an audience is 100% on the page without leading them. This does that. We set up the visual storytelling. This proves that. This is a father-son. It's a teaching moment. And we finish with the twist in the back. But it's also, the kid has learned from that moment. If it wasn't for that dialogue, we wouldn't get it. It's just, what the hell do you go? So it all stems down.
Kid's a monster. Yeah. No, I think this is a great page. I think we did it. And we did it with time to spare. Very little time to spare. But, all right, Roberto, if you can unmute, because I'm going to do a little outro for us.
I think you're reading much that I put into it, but that's the great thing of art, right?
Yeah. You could take your own meaning out of every panel, but
exactly.
Right on. Okay, so we'll get you going, Philip. Thank you so much. This is a wonderful episode. I'm really happy with how this all turned out. Not just the page, but you're very easy to talk to. You got a lot to say. So I really do appreciate it. Let us know who you are, what you're up to, where we can find you.
Philip Tarl Denson, our comic book graphic novel, Future Tales. Go on to Amazon. I can send you the link. You can add that. It's perfect thing for Christmas. It's 100 pages, fairy tales told in, reimagine this future post-apocalyptic cyberpunk world. But also check out the wildnorthcomics.com, that website, and see what else we're cooking up. Some pretty exciting things.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll do the outro for Roberto. I've heard it a few times anyway. So Roberto Viacava, our wonderful artist. You can find everything of his at viacavaillustration.com. He's also at Viacava Roberto on most of the socials, but go to viacavaillustration.com. You will find all of his socials on there and spread out from that direction. And to end it, I'm Adriano at Pesto Comics on everything and at pestocomics.com. Philip, thank you again so much. This was a wonderful episode. And thanks to all of you. We'll talk to you next time.